Good afternoon, good evening, and for my guest today, I think it's going to be a very good morning indeed. I'm super pumped. First of all, I want to welcome each and every one of you to the Advance Impact Legacy Show, where we inspire people to advance in their field, in their sphere, to create an impact bigger than themselves, the outcome of which is legacy. And our guest today literally embodies that. He's somebody that I've wanted to get on the show for some time. He's an incredible gentleman, a serial entrepreneur, the co-founder of what I believe is the number one, franchise, business model for entrepreneurial services in the world. He's also somebody that lives life to the full. We are talking Ironman competitions, extreme sports, traveling the globe. He is also starting to get well known on the stand-up, comedy field as well. And I just love this guy. I think he's absolutely excellent. He's somebody that inspires me, and I wanted to bring him his story and some of the principles and strategies which he embodies so well to the viewers in the show, because I think that's going to give great value. So without further ado, please welcome my good friend, Mr. Michael Graham.
Matt,
hey, Mike, how are you?
What an intro. Now, no pressure. I hope
it was okay. There's a lot I could say, and we're going to dig into your journey. First of all, I really appreciate you giving your valuable time. I really do appreciate how busy you are, and to give some value for the viewers and to share your journey. Thank you so much, Mike.
Yes. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here, Matt. Great to be here.
Good. I'm just going to get the titles up. One second. Where are you in the world right now, Mike?
I'm in the US, but it's funny listening to you. Where is he right now? Because next week I'll be in London.
Really?
Yeah, we're coming to London for a week, and 2 weeks ago we were in Bahrain. So it's it's always one of those. Where are you right now? But it's part of the fun.
I always say I used to think that I was a global citizen until I met you.
That's funny.
You've got to take it to another level, really. That's a lot of continents in a short space of time.
Yeah, but it's good fun, isn't it? It's good fun. It is good fun.
Absolutely. You really do live life to the full. So, Mike, just for the viewers, I always like to start with, where are you from? Where did it all begin? What are some of those early sort of childhood moments that may have contributed to shape the gentleman we see today?
Yeah. So, so originally I'm from Brazil, born in Brazil. Mum's Brazilian, dad's actually English, hence the England connection. And really my kind of journey into business or sales or entrepreneurship kind of started when I was 16. My parents had a divorce at the time, which was very messy. And I was doing very well in school. I was also playing very high level rugby, which is kind of where the sport comes from. And I remember my mum gave me some money. Mum gave me about £10,000 to stay in education, and more of a, here's some money, see you later, wash hands kind of situation. And I was 16. I was at very top, I was very good at my grades in school. So I just took the money and went traveling for a year. So I did all my coursework online. And this was at a time where, doing anything online was just crazy. I remember I emailed my teachers when I'd left going, I've left. So for me to pass, you're going to have to send me the coursework, and they did. They sent me the coursework when I was traveling, and I kept traveling. And I came back a year later. I was totally broke because I think when you're 16, when you're young, you just don't realize that whilst you've got money, you have to keep making money to maintain the, I didn't understand that basic law. So I came back, I was, totally broke a year later. I was 17. And what happened was I needed to pay my rent within 2 weeks. And my parents they weren't talking to me. They, obviously they weren't very happy with what I'd done, etc. I was living by myself in Manchester, and I just applied for a job in the newspaper. I went for job ads that said, it was a tiny little ad in the newspaper. It was the Loot. and it said cash pay daily, immediate start, commission only sales. To me, I just read cash pay daily. I was like, that sounds great. And I rocked up to this interview, and I got the job because everybody got the job, and it was door-to-door commission only sales.
Wow.
And so I got the job. And in my first day doing door-to-door sales, I made at the time I made £300 cash, right? And my rent was £300 because I had a room. My rent was £300, and I was just hooked. I was like, wow, this is great. I remember at the time because we were selling stuffed toys. So we were selling stuffed toys, and we were selling these stuffed toy pigs. And they sent me in Manchester. They sent me to an area called Prestwich, which is it's predominantly a Jewish area, right? Yeah. So going to a Jewish area selling stuffed toy pigs is not like the greatest idea, but but I think people just bought because I don't know. We built rapport and all that kind of stuff. But I made 300 quid selling stuffed toy pigs, so I was like, this is great, And then a year later, I had a scholarship to go to Cambridge to play rugby. I defaulted on my scholarship because when I was 18, I started a door-to-door sales company. The company I was at started to fall apart, and one of the older guys pulled me aside and went, why don't we start a door? You're great at sales, you're great at training people, you've done really well, you've got a lot of energy. Why don't we start a company together? Right. And I was like, I was making decent money. I was like, why not? Let's give it a go. So, at 18, you have nothing to lose, right? So I defaulted on my scholarship, started this company when I was 18. And then by the time I was 21, we had over 1,000 reps across the UK. We were working with some really big brands. I defaulted on my scholarship again, and then I lost my scholarship eventually. But my thought process was I was making so much money and doing so well in business. Yeah. I was like, what am I going to go, maybe egotistical, but I was like, what am I going to go to Cambridge and learn, So yeah, that's the way it happened. And then I sold that business. I then went back to Brazil and helped my family with, we used to have a farm in Brazil, and we were trying to win a contract with McDonald's. So I went to do that for a little bit. And then I came back and set up what we're doing now 10 years ago. And, like you said earlier, very nicely, I franchised the business. We're all over the globe. And that was very much the dream. The dream was to set something up that could be international, that, not everybody's dream is that, but I find it pretty cool landing in an area, impacting a bunch of people, making money, helping people out, and then kind of, checking out, going to the next place. So yeah, that's pretty much that's the story, really.
Yeah, no, what a journey, Mike. And, I listen to a lot of interviews, and obviously, we've all got a great network here. And it seems to be a very entrepreneurial trait that young man goes to uni almost to fulfill parents' desires and ends up finding something where he makes money, or a young lady could be, of course, and, just gets on that entrepreneurial track. One question I wanted to ask you is, do you think some people are born with sort of entrepreneurial skill or entrepreneurial calling maybe in their purpose? Or do you think it's just something you get the bug and it kind of feels good and you just go for it? Well, what's your view on that?
I think some people are more, they're more inclined towards it. It's like being good at sports, right? Some people are naturally better at sports than others. Yes. But everybody can be, adequate or good at some level, Okay. Like, for example, I've just started doing Jiu Jitsu. And to be honest, I just get beaten up half the time. I just spend like 2 hours just getting beaten up. But there's, like in anything in life, whether it's jiu-jitsu, whether it's being an entrepreneur, whether it's being a business owner, whatever it is, there's a level of struggle in the beginning. And I think everybody is born with the ability to go through that. You think about it, right? When someone's a kid, like a baby, the biggest struggle they have in the beginning is talking and walking, right? So I think most people accomplish that struggle. They go through that, right? What happens at some point, I think, though, is maybe the education system, maybe their family, maybe the environment, whatever it is, that ability to just keep pushing past and wanting to learn new things, because that's really what entrepreneurship's about. I think you have an idea, you believe that your idea is possible, even though a lot of people might tell you, actually, you can't do this, blah, blah, blah. but you still somehow make it happen. And it's exactly like walking and talking in the beginning. You know, you go through that, but you have to have a lot of the skills I think that children have in the beginning,
Right.
you know. And I just think that what happens is through the process of growing up, education, you know, the education system, through the process of parents, through the process of your environment, that changes. You know, for me, one of the really the biggest, where I had my first taste of entrepreneurship was when I was 8. You know, when I was 8, I remember this so clearly. I wanted some biscuits, right? And my grandma at the time, she was quite entrepreneurial, and she said, "You can't have any," right? And I went, "You know what? I can have it." And I was just trying to figure out. I was like, I wanted biscuits, so I went to my neighbor's house and I washed their car. I got 10 reals or £10, and I went to the store. I bought some biscuits, and I sat on the table and I just started munching, you know. And she walks in, she was like, "Where'd you get the biscuits from?" I was like, "Well, you told me I couldn't have any, but you didn't tell me I couldn't go next door and wash a car and get money and go to, you know." So she was like, "Okay, well, let's see how long you keep doing this." So every weekend I'd go to her house and I would do the same thing. But the thing was, the process was I'd get the money, I'd go and spend it on something, right? And then eventually she sat me down and she went, "Look, how much money are you making?" And I went, you know, we went through it. She was like, "What about, do you think any of the boys in your year group would be interested in doing this?" And I went, "Yeah, probably." She went, "Well, why don't you get your uncle, and why don't you get the boys, and why don't you do like once a week or twice a week over the weekend?" So we used to do it midweek, and then the weekends, my uncle would drive us in the van. We'd pick up the boys in the neighborhood. The thing I didn't mind doing, I didn't mind knocking on a grown-up's door and going, "Hi, I'm Mike. Can we wash your car?" Right? I didn't mind that, right? What I didn't really like doing was the actual washing of the car, right? But what the boys didn't like doing, they didn't like doing the knocking, and they didn't mind doing the washing of the car, right? So in the end, I mean, we left Brazil when I was 11, 12, but from 8 to 11, 12, we had something like 50 boys and, you know, doing this drive, you know. And I remember I bought a surfboard, which at the time was a big purchase for me. You know, I was 11 and I bought a surfboard, which was about £500, the equivalent at the time of £500. As an 11-year-old, to buy my own surfboard, I was like, this is amazing, you know. And you know, and the biggest thing that I really liked about it was when I used to go into school, you know, the respect you had from the peer group, and the, you know, they'd be like, "Mike, see you on Wednesday for the van, you know, for the car wash." And it was just this, I really liked that. You know, it wasn't even, I liked the money because it was, I liked buying things that I wanted at that age. But I really liked the ability that I was helping people, they were helping me. And there was that level of, I don't know, whatever, respect. You know, there was that level of respect in there, you know. But if I hadn't had that opportunity with my grandma from 8 to 11, then, you know, I would never have experienced that. You know, I think entrepreneurship, like going back to your point, it can definitely be taught, but there has to be an environment for people to learn.
Yeah, I really would agree with that. And it's just listening to your story. I mean, you had such a rich experience of really scaling a business at 8 years old, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. It was very funny, actually. I always, when I tell people the story, because my grandma was a very savvy person, and she was like, "Okay, well, let's go through it," right? And even things like managing the inventory, like if a kid, and we had a little notebook and we used to write everything down, you know, every Saturday we'd sit down and write it down. And she'd be like, "Okay, well, how many cars did this kid wash with X amount of soap, and, you know, how much water did he use?" And we used to give bonus if the kids used less, you know, less inventory, because then you could maximize that inventory. And she used to charge me 10. I remember, you know, after doing this for 6 months, she was like, "Okay, I'm now going to charge you a 10% fee." And I was like, "Why?" She was like, "I'm your consultant." I was like, "Okay, great." You know, and but that was really the first experience that I had of kind of what managing a business was about, but more importantly, what the benefits are and what the struggles are, you know.
It's interesting you use that word struggle, and I think most entrepreneurs that have been in business a while understand that it's not a straight line. There are going to be challenges, there are going to be blips, there are going to be moments where you sort of look at some of your friends that have incredibly good jobs and you're thinking, maybe I should have gone that route. Okay. And that happens to us all. And I think one of the key characteristics of a great entrepreneur is resilience, you know, this sort of toughness that you can build into your character. And you do a lot of sort of what I would call extreme sports. I don't know if that's the correct term, but probably not. But I mean, you do these Ironmans. Would you sort of walk us through that? Because that's got to, just the training, it's got to build a lot of resilience that must feed into your business
Yeah.
life, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. The thing is, where that started. That was started in 2016. I was at a wedding, one of my friends' wedding,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm naturally quite a competitive person.
Right.
And there was a guy at the wedding, and he was a little bit overweight, and he was just not bragging. He was just talking about how he did these Ironman events, right? And I was
Wow.
like, I didn't even know what an Ironman was, but I was like, I started drinking, all that kind of stuff, and I was
Yeah.
like, well, if you do Ironmans and you're in this shape, I can definitely do and I didn't even know what an Ironman was, right? I just kind of liked the sound of it, and I thought I could do it. And then I realized what it was. But the thing was, the next day, all my friends, they'd made a bet, would Mike actually go and sign up for an Ironman? And I talked so much smack that evening that I just had to sign up. So I went from, I didn't run, I didn't do any running, well, very little running. I didn't swim that much. I didn't even own a bike. And an Ironman is a triathlon, so it's a swim, bike, run.
Right.
But the distance you're swimming and biking and running is insane. You swim, you do a 4K swim, 3.8 kilometer swim in open water. You cycle 180 kilometers, and then at the end of that, so you do that. At the end of that, you run a marathon, and you have to do it all in one day. So you do it. The one I did, it took me 15 hours of continuous exercise, right?
Yeah.
But it took me 3 years to build up to it. So the first event I did was a half Ironman, which is half of that. And that was a huge struggle. But it's more about, like people talk about resilience, and what I really liked about it. And to be honest, I've kind of stopped doing that type of sport just because I got injured, and I felt that, I was very honest with myself. I felt that for me, I reached a very high level in that sport. I did an Ironman, I've done 10 marathons, I've done all that. I mean, you've seen it on Facebook, but I was just like, I need my next, for me to push to the next level, it's going to take a level of commitment that I'm not ready to take. Like I've just recently got married, like life's changed a lot. And I'm like, I just don't have the time to be able to commit 20 hours a week to that. And there's no shame in it. But I was like, for me, signing up to do an Ironman, if I'm not going to commit the work, then I'm just going to not get the result, right? Whereas now what I'm doing is I'm doing a lot of Jiu Jitsu, I'm doing a lot of CrossFit. I'm still putting in a lot of training time, but it's a different type of commitment. But the point is, people always talk about, it's funny in business, people talk about resilience and and that and this. And I was talking to one of our franchisees yesterday who's going through a very bad time. And he was like, sometimes, Mike, I just don't feel, what did he say? He said, I just don't feel like I have the the motivation, right? And I think, people talk a lot about motivation, resilience. A lot of it is, if you just don't give yourself an option to fail, right? Like for example, with me, I think one of the big reasons I was successful when I was young was because my parents stopped talking to me between 17 to 20. Like my mom wasn't talking to me, my dad kind of went AWOL. So I didn't have a financial security net, right? So if I didn't make it, I'd probably have to, take from the government or something, right? So that wasn't an option. And the reason I look at doing new stuff like triathlon, like now jiu-jitsu, like this, like the comedy speaking that you were talking about, is because how do you build resilience? How do you learn to be in an environment that you're not comfortable in? The only way you learn how to do it is by putting yourself in those environments, I think, right? It's like stand-up comedy, to be honest, I find it terrifying, like I'm okay at public speaking. Like I like getting up.
You're very good at public speaking.
Thanks. I like talking, but stand-up comedy is very different because you're being judged immediately on your content by the concept whether people are laughing or not, and that I've had some sets where I just tank, and just to be okay, it's not the end of the world, I'm not dying, it's fine. That obviously replicates into different parts of business, like when you're doing a deal and you've messed up, it's okay, it's not going to end the world, you can move on, that kind of stuff. But for a lot of people, it's funny. It's not funny for a lot of people, that fear of, I'm going to fail or this and that stops them from even going, I think. So yeah, I think resilience is very important, but it's more, how do you build the resilience? You've got to,
Yes.
you've got to have a training environment to build that resilience,
Yeah.
So that's very important, I think.
That's really good. I mean, I've had the pleasure of watching some of your comedy, and I find it absolutely hilarious. I think it's really, really cool. What I notice, and maybe that's with my sort of salesman's hat on, is you build up incredible buy-in from the audience before you really get into stuff. And that's quite unique. I haven't seen that before. Now, I'm not a great comedy expert or anything like that, but there's a few guys that I watch, and I think, you are really good. And I also think cross-culturally, I know, you're very aligned with America, your wife's American, but, you've probably got more of a British sense of humor. That's what I pick up. And then you're sort of moving to an American crowd. So how's that? I mean, is that interesting? Is there some cultural dynamics there?
I mean, it's funny because, things that I don't find that funny, they find hilarious, right? And things that I find funny, they just don't find that funny at all. Like, for example, if I'm tanking in a set, my get out of jail joke is how it's a bit longer than this, but the short version is how when my wife first introduced me to her friends, she asked me to say the 2 most British words in the English dictionary, which is Harry Potter, right? And obviously you say it in a very British accent, all that kind of stuff. And they just find that joke hilarious. And really? I just don't find that joke funny at all. But
it wouldn't go down in London, really.
It just wouldn't go down in London very funny, right? But to the American audience, they get it. So yeah, but again, that's and that's really helped me, for example, in sales and business and coaching and mentoring, because the ability to try and force yourself to relate to an audience that you don't understand, but to put yourself in their shoes to try and figure that out, it replicates massively in terms of training, coaching, what I do for business, and just building with the business, just trying to understand people. There's a direct, a lot of things. I think the learning process, there's that osmosis process, right? Like something flows into something else, so that's part of my thing. One of my clients, a really great guy, not a client anymore, more of a friend now, but he kind of said this concept to me. He was like, he wants to be like a life ninja, and he just wants to pick up different skills all the time. And he does some really random stuff sometimes, but like he just does some really random stuff. And I'm like, why are you learning that? But you can see what he's learning. It replicates somehow into other parts of his life. So, I've kind of taken that on board, and I try to do the same, man.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And what I notice about you as well is that you seem very, very balanced. Like you're really living out to the max. You're doing all this stuff, but you have a balanced life. You seem to have a social life. You seem to have chill out time. You seem to not be the classic entrepreneur that takes on too much and burns out, sort of thing. So I think that's very worthy of mentioning.
I mean that used to happen in the beginning a lot. Like the first 2 years, it was regular burnouts, and then I was like, this isn't going to work long term. It just isn't. And I think when you think about having a balanced life, there's just there's more to life than just building a business and making money. Which is crazy saying that as a business owner, but there is more to it. And there's and I think, and to be honest, actually what I think is, I think when you switch off from business and when you go and do things like a triathlon or whatever it is that you're trying to do, stand-up comedy, whatever it is for people, that experience of doing something else recharges you to come back into business and be 100%. I would rather, like, my big thing at the moment is because I'm in the US, I try and work 5 hours a day and that's it, right? So I have to do what I'm doing on a normal 8-9 hour day in 5 hours, right? Or sometimes 4 hours, but I get it done because I much rather prefer the concept of working short hours, but be intense, be on it, get it done, and then move on, kind of thing, and that I think for a lot of people, the classic thing with business owners, right, is like when you ask how's things going, they're like, oh, I'm really busy. Normally my second question is, well, are you busy good or are you busy bad? Like, are you busy?
Question.
Because otherwise, if you're just busy and you're not enjoying it, it's just,
Yeah.
You're not going to be in it in the long haul, are you? You're not going to be in it in 5 years, 10 years, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely not. So let's talk a little bit about SME skills, because I've kind of had the privilege of having a good look at the business model. I've got to know you really well over the last few years, and really been impressed with what you're doing there. And I think it brings real value to the business world in terms of supporting people to grow in the business service space, entrepreneurial space, etc. So would you mind telling us a little bit about SME Skills? What are your values, the vision, the mission, and how you help people to really build a solid business? Because a lot of people spend an awful lot of money and time on courses for horses and end up with very little that they can practically transact in the marketplace sustainably.
Yeah.
And I think you've really hit the sweet spot with SME Skills, Mike. So I think it'd be valuable to talk about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, it's a real shame. I think that exactly what you're talking about. A lot of people pay a lot of money for courses, etc., whatever they're doing, and they come out with very little, right? And I think a lot of it is, it's not because I actually don't think because the course isn't good. Okay, some courses are not good. I actually think it's just because it's so complex, and for a lot of people, I've been on a lot of these courses, to implement some of that stuff is very difficult. When we started 10 years ago, I didn't even really want to start the business, to be honest. It was more of an idea where I was networking, I was meeting business owners, and I didn't have a genius idea like an app or anything like that. What I had was my ability from my door-to-door days of I could train many people to sell anything. Like the product didn't matter, anything didn't really matter. Like what mattered is, did you have a product, service, could you sell it, right? Yeah. And I just noticed, and I think you've noticed this as well, is that a lot of business owners have great businesses, great services. They're very nice people, but what they can't do is they just can't sell to save their lives, right? And I think it's not because they don't have the gift of the gab and all that kind of stuff. A lot of it's because they just don't have a system. They don't have a simple and effective system to go and sell, right? And that was where the idea came from. The idea was to be able to work with any business and try and multiply the actual thing was to try and double their turnover in 6 months, right? That was kind of the big idea. And 10 years later, we've worked with hundreds of businesses. I decided to franchise my business 5 years ago, and the reason was because I had a lot of clients 5 years ago. I think I was working with like 100 companies at a time, and it was just I was just getting I was just running out of energy, and I realized I reached the max point of my impact. Like as one individual, there's only so many people I can impact, right? Absolutely. So I decided to kind of formulate everything that I trained someone on and franchise that out. And then since then, last 4 or 5 years, we're in the UK, we're in Bahrain, we're in Dubai, we're in Kuwait, we're in many different countries. And we just have these coaches, consultants, we call them, where they go to market and they teach that methodology of working, and helping businesses. And really the idea is over the next 5 to 10 years, we want to impact 10,000 businesses to help them to double, triple their turnover. And really the other big thing we want to try and do is we want to try and become like a management consultancy for the SME market, like the SME market. And it's not just about trying to sell them anything. It's about trying to offer them things that can actually help them. So the reason we focus on sales and not just overall coaching, because overall coaching, I've met many people and coaches, and it takes something special for someone to be a good business coach. I think, it not everybody can do it, and but being good at teaching someone sales, anybody can do that. Like, within a certain frame, anybody can teach that. So we don't do business coaching. We focus purely on the sales. But now what we want to do is we want to add more and more different services to, services that can actually help people. Like, for example, one thing we've been doing over COVID, we've been working with a gentleman that you know very well as well. And we've just been basically offering our clients, if they needed finance, offering them finance as well, right? And because that's the service that goes hand in hand, right? But we're not going to start doing business coaching because it just, we're not going to be that good at it. So that's really our idea. Our idea is to expand internationally, launch these franchise partners internationally, impact business. We were in Bahrain at the beginning of November, and we ran a series of events. We had a great week. We launched some new clients. Miles is doing fantastically well out there, and that to me is very exciting because you're making a much now we have over 100 clients, and I work with maybe a handful of them. So that when you look at the impact, it's much bigger. But I'm doing not less. I'm just doing a different style of work. Do you see what I mean?
I really love the way you've set it up, and I know that we've referred some clients over there as well. They're all very happy, doing very well. And I think from the UK perspective, there's a lot of people going into consultancy, going into coaching, going into some sort of entrepreneurial service provision, and they are finding it hard to get the marketing piece right. They're finding it hard to generate leads, and they're finding it hard to actually bring revenue in. And I think you solve those three big problems and a whole lot more, which is really, really refreshing to see. And you do what it says on the tin, which is phenomenal. I think it's no spin, no fluff. It's just does what it says on the tin, and it works, which is very, very good. And you've got a proven track record of success as well, Mike. So that is really, really, really phenomenal indeed. What is the next step for SME Skills? I mean, what are you sort of planning for the future?
Yeah, I think the next step we're very much focused on that expansion of the franchise network.
Right.
Because I think what's interesting with COVID, a lot of people have realized that there's more to life than just working, right? But not even just working. People have realized that why do I need to work in one location? I could work anywhere, Like we've had one of our newest franchisees, he's been with us 4 months, Gary, in Brighton, and he's decided to go and spend a month in Spain, right? And I was just talking to him about it. I was like, isn't that cool? Like you've just set up this business, you've got a bunch of clients, and now you decided you're going to go and spend a month in Spain. He was like, yeah, in my corporate job, I would never have been able to do that, So, I think people are going through that transition. The world is going through that transition of that people want more options. They want more freedom. So the idea with SME Skills is let's wrap, there's a huge opportunity for us to ramp up, get more franchise partners on board. And then when you look at it, every country, like we're in Colombia, we're in so many different countries. Yes, there's always something to navigate in the country, like sometimes the currency, sometimes people's buying perception, et cetera, et cetera. But the point is, every country has businesses that needs to increase their sales, right?
Exactly.
And that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to ramp that up. Maybe one day we'll have these big, large conferences, et cetera. That would be cool. But to be honest, I mean, I was talking to someone about it. Someone was saying we should be more flashy about what we do. Maybe we should, but I think we're much, I don't know. I like to think that we just get the job done kind of thing, We should be a lot more kind of flashy and running these big conferences, etc. But on the same side, and again, on the other point that we want to do, like I said earlier, is we just want to try and add more services, more services where we can really help a business grow. Because,
Absolutely.
like you said, a lot of businesses, they're very, very good at what they do. They just need something simple that's going to help them grow, and that's going to work, and that kind of, like we've been working with a charity called Kick in London. They're a great charity. They have this Christian focus but what they also do is they go into schools and they provide extracurricular services like mentoring, sports, etc., etc. And they've been going for about 12 years. They've never gone above the £1 million turnover. Never. They've never gone above that. And then we worked with them for we're working with them again, but we worked with them for the last 9 months of last year. And we took them to 2.5 million in that 9-month period, right? And when you look at it, it was, for us, it was a lot of obvious things that they weren't doing, right? For them, it's that classic where you don't know, right? And now the goal is for us to take them from 2.5 to take them to 3.54 in the next 12 months, right? But the crazy thing is that business is such a good business. They impact so many young people. They do such a good job. Our ethos is that business has the responsibility to grow. And it's,
Right.
for a lot of people, it's the same thing. If you have a business and your business is good and there's a good service, good product, then you kind of have a responsibility to grow, and that's pretty much how we play it.
Yeah, I really like that. So you do work with non-profits as well. And yeah, that's really very, very cool. There will be, Mike, a lot of people watching this, the replay and so forth, that are in business, are struggling with sales, and are probably buying all these weird and wonderful courses, which are quite generic. You're smiling, so you've probably got the same thinking as me. What would your advice from a sales perspective be for those people? What sort of key tips or principles would you sort of give them?
Yeah, I think when you look at sales, right, a lot of people think about it. If you said to a random like for example, you say to any business owner, and you go, what is important in your sales system, in your sales game? A lot of people would say things like closing or pitching or building impulse. A lot of it is focused on the pitch, right? Whereas our methodology, what we teach, it kind of breaks into 4 pillars, like 4 areas, and pitch is very much the last thing we focus on, right? Because really, the way we look at it, and whether it's right or wrong, it gets results. Whether we look at it is the 4 pillars are very much your sales strategy, so your lead generation, your sales process, how you convert those leads, your sales attitude, so your mentality towards selling, and then the last thing is your pitch. We've had clients that, in all honesty, their pitch wasn't that good, but because they could generate leads consistently, because they followed the process, and because they had a phenomenal attitude, they would triple their turnover in like 90 days. Their pitch still needed work. But I think that's the classic mistake I see in the market so much, is that a business goes, I want to become better I want to increase my sales. Okay, let's go and learn these 24 different ways of closing people, right? Whatever it is, right? And that's great, but if you don't have any more opportunities, you're not increasing your chances, And I think for any business, the very first step is, if you want to increase your sales, how do you increase your opportunities? Increase your opportunities. Once you do that, you're just going to have more chances. It's like a striker in football. If he kicks the ball, if I'm playing up against Ronaldo, for example, and he takes 2 penalties and I take 100, I'm probably going to beat him. I'd hope, even if he scores 102, I'm probably going to beat him. And it's the same thing in business.
I might even have a chance with 100.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it's about. I think in the beginning, it's just get more opportunities in your pipeline, get good opportunities in your pipeline, because so many business owners, the classic thing that we see in the market for a business that's turning over less than, let's say, less than £5 million a year turnover on average, most businesses have 2 sales channels. They'll do something like they get most of their business through referrals,
right?
And maybe they'll do something like a website, or they'll do something else. But the very first part is, how do you get 2 channels and turn it into 5? Because immediately you're going to get more opportunities, right? And that's kind of the very first part, I think.
I love that answer, and it took me back to my sort of early days in sales, when I walked in to a sales floor in London, not wanting to be there, but not having any choice, because no one else wanted me, believe it or not. And I remember the boss, who was an ex-army guy, this was in Kensington, he marched me into his office and he said, right, Matt, he said, we will give you leads, and all you've got to do is remember this. I think this is like 25, 27 years ago. He said, all you've got to do is remember this. Out of 10 leads, 2 of them will say yes, no matter what you tell them. Okay? 2 of them will say no, no matter what you tell them. Okay? And 6 of them, that's where you make your bread and butter. Okay? And it seems so easy, but obviously you've got to learn how to work those 6. But it really came back to having those opportunities, having those 10 in front of you, and then having 100. So really good advice there, Mike. And I think that's advice that is often missed out there in the sales training, marketplace, which is really, really good. Who do you look up to in the sales world? Now, I know you've got your own book. When we put this on YouTube, we're going to put a link to Mike's book. because you really do, viewer, want to get a copy of Mike's book, and you do want to be following him on all the channels. But who do you sort of draw inspiration from? Who do you sort of look up to in that?
It changes very regularly. Like in the beginning, it used to be, I really liked Grant Cardone, the Texan sales guy. He actually said something to me that was, I remember way back in the day, I went through this big dilemma in my head, which was, as a sales consultancy, right?
Yeah.
We didn't want to come across salesy when we were trying to close our prospects, right? So it's like I went the other way to not be salesy, right? And he said something. He said, one of the biggest, whether you agree with, to me it hit home. He said, whether if you believe you have a good product and service, then it's your obligation, it's your duty to make someone sign up, because the reality is, and it's so true with what we do, if you really can help somebody, if you genuinely believe in it, if you've sold yourself on the concept that you can do it 100%, then you will be able to impact that onto others. Because if you miss the opportunity to work with that person, but genuinely you could have helped them, where are they going to be in 6 months, 1 year, 10 years? And that genuinely is my attitude when I'm pitching people. I say things to people sometimes where I'm like, look, I'm not being horrible to you, but if you don't figure out your sales, you're going to be out of business in 6 to 12 months. And that sometimes people would think, wow, that's really brutal. That's really salesy. And yeah, it is. But it's also because I know hand on heart that I can help that person in 6 months, 12 months to transform their lives, right? So he made a big impact on me. The other guy that I find, I mean, this one's very controversial, but I really like Jordan Belfort. Not necessarily as a person or anything like that, but in terms of his approach to selling, things like using his voice, using his tonality, that kind of stuff. I really like that. I also really like, the classics like Tony Robbins. I find him very motivational, but it changes for me. Like, for example, for the last 2-3 years, I've been heavily into David Goggins,
what a guy.
You look at the mentality, resilience, he really doesn't cut it. He's like, he just says things, like, to me, it's really good. Right now, I'm very much into, because I'm going into Jiu Jitsu, I'm very much learning about the Gracie family. So it changes all the time. But I think I always try and, I always try and listen to content where people that inspire me and motivate me, and, because sometimes people say one thing and you listen to it and it clicks some part of your brain, and that's what you needed to hear. You didn't need to hear the whole 1 hour spiel. You just needed that 1 minute, but to find that 1 minute, you've got to listen to the whole thing.
It's really interesting that you're getting into martial arts. I don't know if you had any previous experience, something that I've done for a long time. But I found it very beneficial for business, very beneficial for selling, and very beneficial for just checking in on myself. Because let's face it, you go to a dojo and most of the time you're going to be like probably, the beginner or the novice of the class, and you get your ass handed to you, literally.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big guy, right? And I've been to dojos where the tallest guy was like 5'2", and I'm looking at them, I'm thinking, you're not going to be able to put me down. And they fling me around that like you wouldn't believe, right? And you just come out humbled. You really get to empty your cup. And then there's just so much more to the martial arts. How is it as somebody that's born in Brazil, you've got a Brazilian mother, how is it kind of going back to, this big gift that the Brazilians have given, the Gracie family have given the world with the BJJ? How's that for you? Is that a fit? Or
I mean, when I was younger, I did boxing, and I also did a bit of Aikido, but I'm never at a very high level. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu obviously was very popular in Brazil. But me as a kid, I was quite skinny, I was quite scrawny, I was quite lanky, and I did 1 or 2 classes when I was a kid, and I just remember getting choked out and all that kind of stuff, and I just basically got afraid of it, right? So for me, it was a whole big coming back around to being facing a fear from when I was much younger, and I mean, I'm very much at the phase where I just a little bit like what you said, I just get beaten up for the most of the class, right? But I enjoy the concept of every what my mentality is, okay, I got beaten up that way, maybe it was like a baseball choke or something. That's not going to happen again, right? So by trial and error, by failure, I'm getting better, and I'm starting to submit people now, and and it's all that kind of fun stuff, and yeah, I think a big part of it is just that. I think the biggest thing that it gives you trying to learn something new, whether it's martial arts or anything, maybe it's playing an instrument for people, whatever it is, it's just keeping your mind fresh and keeping yourself on your toes, because that's what business is so much about. I think, it's so much about being fresh, staying on your toes, seeing the opportunity, and then going for it, and I think a lot of people miss that, especially once they've been in over 5 years, because they're doing the same stuff that they always did, expecting a different result, and it's just not going to happen, So, for example, one person, going back to your question before, one person that I'm really into at the moment is Elon.
Elon
like,
Musk. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff he says, you're just like, that does not make sense, but some of the stuff he says, you're like, wow, that's pretty clever, So yeah, I think that's what it's about. But martial arts is, again, it's going back to trying to face that fear, and it's just the enjoyment of trying to do something new and stay fresh.
Yeah, I think it's really good. I mean, it's just like that whole growth concept of growing in different directions of your life. Holistically, it brings a lot to the table. Yeah. And it also makes you a really balanced and kind of interesting person, which, some of the biggest sales deals I've ever been in, we leave the sale and we're just talking about life, and you connect, and you might be well read, or you're doing something that they're interested in, or they're doing something that and you just connect. And then it just happens, right? So I think it's very important to constantly develop and move forward, which is really, really, really cool. So I mean, what is Mike Graham's exit plan? Does he have one? What does the future hold for you? I know you just got married, but have you done a year yet?
Yeah, we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary. Yeah, we just did that. So we've got 59 years to go.
Wow.
That's the joke we have. 60 years,
It's really great to see you happy and settled, Mike. Really, really
great
to see.
Yeah. No, it is good. It is good. I really enjoy it. It's just another adventure, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, because how long have you been married?
I had got married in 1999. We've celebrated, 21 years? 22 years.
That's awesome.
22 years.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It goes fast though. It's like, people say, wow, you've been married so long, but it goes really fast. Like, click your fingers, man, and it's like 5 years, and then it's like 10 years, But it's it's an adventure, right?
Yeah, 100% it is. Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's great fun, to be honest. It's good fun. You have these adventures together. You're with your best friend. It's just a good time, really.
I really enjoyed that comedy sketch where you spoke about how you met your wife, and like you were friends, and then you went to this club, and there was an incident, and then you realized it was the one, and it was just so cool. Guys, if you're not on Mike's YouTube and sees comedy, you got to watch it. It's very, very cool. You will thank me later. Mike, just in finishing, we probably have some people that could do with some life advice. The pandemic has, hit people pretty hard. I think there's people out there that come to this show for inspiration. Maybe they've given up on some of their dreams. In jiu-jitsu terms, maybe they just need to get their gi on and get back on the mat, right? What would you say to those people that are kind of, they've been hit pretty hard, and they're kind of thinking, what is next? What would your advice as a seasoned businessman?
I think the biggest thing is you've got to, attitude, mindset is so important, right? And I think it's not that it's useless, but I think, going to a 3-day seminar of whoever isn't going to transform your life. Getting the pump and getting excited and being like, woohoo, that isn't going to change your life, right? But small daily, whatever it is, habits, they will change your life. They will transform, like, for example, for me, two things I do every day the first two things I do every day, I check my bank account, number one. And number two, I write down what I'm grateful for. Just one thing. I don't do like 3, 5 things, but I always check my bank account, and I always, what's it called? And I always write something that I'm grateful for every day, right? And what that does is because I think environment, there's 2 types of environment. There's your physical environment, there's your mental environment, right?
Wow.
And I think a lot of people don't understand that too much, and they don't change anything about their environment. Mindset environment, for example, if I don't have money in my bank account that's come in, even if it's £10 of that day, I'm hustling that day to go and change that situation, right? And physical environment, for example, for me, I started working from home way before COVID, because I didn't want to keep going into an office. I realized one day that going to the office, I just wasn't excited about it, and I was like, what am I doing, right? Recently, for example, we changed the layout of my home office for it to be more a better environment for me to work, right? So environment's so important. That physical and that mental environment, I think, are 2 massively important parts that, physical environment will affect your mental environments, and sometimes forcing yourself, even going for a walk, something little like that, that breaks your physical environments, pushes your mental environments. And then if you have some daily habits, whatever the daily habits are, that will, it'll play a big difference. It sounds really silly, but things like, it sounds so silly saying it, but things like eating well, drinking water, getting enough sleep, we all know this stuff, right? But it's doing it that makes the big difference.
And it's creating, like you rightly say, it's creating those habits.
Yeah.
Because once the habit's there, your unconscious can't actually resist it.
Yeah.
There's some kind of stuff that I do in the morning, and sometimes I'm not up for it, but I end up doing it because the habit's already built in.
Yeah.
It just goes on to kind of auto mode,
Yeah. And so, like it's I mean, right now, I'm not right now, but there's so much advice in the world. People like, get up at 5 a.m, meditate for half an hour, do this, do that. I mean, listen, sometimes I get up at 5, I go to the gym at 5:30, very rarely now, but it's like, you have to I think part of the challenge is you have to find what works for you, and then you have to be dedicated to doing it. You have to be committed to doing it. I think, one of the big things one of my old mentors said to me when we used to do the door-to-door sales, because door-to-door is so hard, and we used to always focus at the very beginning. We used to do an induction with people where it was all about finding their why. Why do you want to be successful? And for some people, it was really beautiful things, like they wanted to maybe retire their parents, right? So then when they had a bad day, right, like it rained and they didn't sell anything and they came back and they wanted to quit, we'd be like, I mean, this was a bit bad, but we'd be like, so you're going to quit on your parents, which is terrible, right? But immediately when you have such a big why, your problems don't seem that, that big. And I think people lose track of what their why is, that focus, and then the problems become much bigger, and then it just becomes a spiral.
100%. And let's face it, it rains a lot in Manchester, so
it rains every day.
That's definitely going to be there. Like, anything last words you want to say to the audience? Anything you want to?
No, it's been great, Matt. It's been great. Thank you so much. Like, it's been awesome. I've been seeing the show. Thank you very much for inviting me on. Yeah, it's been I've really enjoyed it.
Good. Well, thank you again for your time. I know it's Thanksgiving, in the US tomorrow. So wishing you all a wonderful, Thanksgiving, weekend with your family and so forth. And again, Mike, thank you for sharing your journey, your knowledge, your experience so openly with the viewers, and of course, your precious time. Really, really appreciate you.
Awesome
Thank you.
Stuff. Thank you so much, Matt. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Bye-bye now.
Bye. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there we are. We have Mr. Mike Graham himself. We'll put all the links into YouTube so you can follow Mike. You can see what he's up to at SME Skills, but also, get into his comedy and his martial arts journey as well. It's really inspiring stuff. Mike's one of my favorite people on the planet. He lives life to the full. It's full of inspiration. And more importantly, he's building something that's much bigger than him, impacting and helping lives all around the world and creating that proverbial entrepreneurial win, 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 which I really, really love. My name is Matt Onarona. My time is up, and I, of course, want to thank you for yours.